Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astoma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great vigor. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. There are great advances in modern science today, but the puzzle still remains: what is nature? Because the whole of the study of physics is to do with how does this universe work? What is the basis of it? Nothing, of course, deals with anything in great depth. Why is it there? That then is the realm of philosophy. So there's a question: if we understand automatically that we live in an environment and we decide that we'll call this nature, what is nature? And how real is it? What is real nature? Now the question, of course, suggests that maybe the nature that we take for granted is not necessarily real. But of course, we understand that we register it as real by virtue of our reactions. Our whole life is centered around dealing with it. So we can't just dismiss it, as some philosophers might do, and say it is unreal. Our experience tells us something different. Then the next thing that some philosophers use is a term illusion. Well, that also can lead to a dismissive attitude to say, well, it's unreal, it's an illusion, therefore let's not bother with it. But then that results in sheer laziness and we don't get anything done. But we knowingly have to operate in a world, an environment around us. And I think it's a good thing to understand where we live. We know what our address is. Somebody once asked, I think it was Swami Purnananda, will you give us a short address? So he said, yes. He said, Belumat, Calcutta. Something like that. I think it was a variation on that anyway. The remarkable thing is that when you look into the sky, it's just like a roof. You have no idea where you are unless you take astronomy classes. So we're living on an unremarkable planet, very small thing, circulating an average kind of sun in the suburbs of a galaxy. The galaxy itself is part of a group of galaxies in a sea of vastness with several trillions of galaxies, if not more. Inestimable vastness. So most people have no idea where they live. And yet we classify this as nature. Most people think that nature is going for a nature walk. You'll find nature in some way excluding themselves from the whole totality that we call nature. So if we are to consider nature, we have to put ourselves into it. And the ancient rishis decided that we cannot sample every aspect of existence. If we start somewhere, namely the small microcosm that we call myself, and we find the foundation of that, then we'll have found the nature of existence everywhere. It's not necessary to sample everything. This will be good enough. Only one axiom should be there. What applies here will apply everywhere. And when Einstein made his general relativity, He adopted that position. When Newton found his theory of gravity, he decided that when an apple falls to the ground, all things should fall. And when you apply these principles to do with mass and velocity and so on, and force, you have gravity essentially, and he was quite happy with that. But he didn't know what it was. In fact, to date, nobody knows why things fall. Why should there be such a thing as gravity? Why should there be electrical energy? Why should there be inertia? The Sankhya philosophers, they describe the universe as a modification of what is called Prakriti, the thing that is fairly rough, uneven. Things work because they are asymmetrical. I often give the example that Stephen Hawking gave, the late Stephen Hawking. You fill the Cambridge dining hall with ball bearings, nothing will happen. Every sphere will connect with the other sphere. No movement, everything is wedged. You remove a few of these and things start shuffling and shifting. So there has to be some kind of upset in the equilibrium of things. But the equilibrium state itself is what is called Prakriti, and its modifications also are called Prakriti, nature. So nature has these two aspects. One state of equilibrium and the other state of activity. But according to these Sankhyas, the cause itself manifests as its effect. That means we don't need anything else. Nature itself can do everything. This is very similar to many of the conclusions of some modern scientists. The effect before it is produced exists as the cause according to them. But according to another school of philosophers, which includes dualists and theists, people in most religions, the effect is, or the universe didn't exist before it was created, and the effect is non-existent before it's produced. Something like a potter making a pot from the clay, pre-existent clay. Shankaracharya, he points out that that's an utter impossibility, because it's an impossibility of the finite mind's ever understanding the nature of the universe in terms of the causal relationship. Because the causal relationship that we know of, where cause and effect are indeed different varieties of the same thing, nothing new ever gets created. It's all a shifting change in modifications. And so this is transformational causation. Something is made into something else, but the sum total still exists. And this is summarized in laws of physics. The sum total of mass and energy remains the same. Nothing is created and nothing is destroyed. So that kind of causal relationship might be unsatisfactory and also leads to a position of ad infinitum, because we presume that Creator God has got some resource. But theistic thinking says that it is ex nihilo, it comes from nothing. Don't try and work it out, just accept it. And then the modern scientists will say something similar, something a little bit more difficult to swallow, that nothing made everything out of nothing. And that would be difficult to accept as well. But you see, the Sankhyas are kind of steady state cosmologists. They say no origin, no beginning, but a perpetual rise and fall, like the oceans. One wave forms, and it's self-causing. So when we talk about the universe from Shankaracharya's point of view, we have to introduce a term called Maya. Maya is a term that infers something that is measured, but it is also something that is inscrutable. We can't understand what it is. The kind of causation that we find in the world is called parinarma, that is transformational causation. But another kind of causation is proposed, vivarta, something like an apparitional causation. Are there some examples for that? Yes. Something appears to be what it isn't actually, and when we see it properly, it disappears. So something like if you're in a desert, and then you see an appearance on the horizon, trees and flowers and water shimmering. This kind of sight will be real for the person seeing it, and the lips will anticipate the flow of water through the lips and so on. But of course, when we investigate it properly, then this will leave us. So where Shankara calls the universe Maya, he's only stating a fact. And namely, the fact is that that one appears inexplicably as many. And there's a great mystery. How can the one become many? When a snake has been held in place of a rope, for example, the phenomena may be described as Maya. But several components are necessary. And the illusion of a snake superimposed on a rope in the twilight of the evening, when the eyesight is not so reliable, it has to employ several factors, and these are inherent in Maya. Now, Maya and Prakriti are interchangeable terms. And because we are seeing the thing in a wrong way, ignorance is also there. So now ignorance, lack of understanding, nature, all of these are now synonymous terms. So what we call nature is deemed in this sense to be unreal. When we make a mistake like that, three things are necessary. Something has to be projected, something has to be hidden. And when we get close to it and analyze it properly, then we'll see that these two elements disappear and the thing is seen as it is. And that means that everything in the universe must be an echo or a signature of that real thing, because in the example of a rope appearing as a snake, it didn't appear as a bus or some other thing. There was a resemblance. The snake and the rope resembled each other. So that what we see in the universe is an indicator, like a signpost. Look here, look here, look here. And if we want to understand the reality of things, we have to start with nature and ask, where is it pointing us? How will it reveal the truth by itself? And it is not difficult to see that there's an inherent beauty in a sunrise or a sunset, or nature as we classically understand it, a walk through a forest, going by a waterfall, using all these components, even in bringing them back as memories in meditation to guide us inward. In fact, the whole process of meditation is to pick up these strands and allow this to lead us inward, to find out what is the inner essence of that, what is the inner essence of that, and so it goes on until we find that inner essence beyond which we can no longer go. And there may be a flash then, a poise, a sense of oneness at that point. At that point is called meditation. We use the term meditation as a generic term for a whole process, but it is designed to lead us inward. If that is the case with memories of nature, what about nature itself? We can use that to guide us inwards. But what about an awkward person in front of us? What about somebody who shouts at us? What about events? What about pressure of work? What about all the things that are the opposite of walking in a forest or walking on the sand by the sea? and all the things that we decide are worthy of a holiday from the unfortunate things that seem to be opposite from us. All of it is nature. We can't isolate only the pleasant things and put aside the unpleasant things. The whole thing is nature. And the whole thing is comprised of these three components that create a kind of misunderstanding, a mistake. And because it's a mistake, we often mistakenly react in a mistaken way, in an ignorant way, in a foolish way, reacting with anger, or reacting with resentment or jealousy, or pride, or assertion, or all of these negative things that only have one effect, to give us heart palpitations, or blood pressure, or any number of aberrations, fear, panic, etc. Then we wonder, why do we have these things? And we put it on an external cause. But all causes are internal. And therefore, to have a creator God outside the universe would not be compatible with what we know, even from scientific investigations, that the cause must be inward. It must be subtle. And it must be more general too. So that we have to learn to deal with this so-called nature on something of a different basis, a different level. So when we make this mistake, like a snake in place of a rope, the phenomena is called Maya. And this does not imply any explanation of how or why the rope should thus appear. Or it doesn't tell us why there are these tangible facts. And in the same sense, a mirage is also Maya. Dream objects are Maya. And the creation itself is deemed to be Maya. So this is called Vivarta, apparitional causation. But Vedantists use such terms as avidya, ignorance, ajnana, lack of knowledge, and prakriti are practically synonymous with Maya. And so the word Maya generally signifies the cosmic illusion, an account of which Brahman, or pure consciousness, only appears as the creator of the universe, leaving us scope not to disagree with anybody, but just to insert one small word, appears to create. Do you believe in a creator? It seems to be like that. Do you believe that the creator can manifest in the world, that nature is self-caused? It appears to be like that. And then we say, but what about the world? Is it a real reality? It appears to be like that also. So this cosmic illusion, on account of which Brahman, or pure consciousness, appears as the creator of the universe, is under the influence of avidya, but it doesn't mean to say that this creator is ignorant. Not at all. It always is shining with knowledge. And the evidence of this is that when all this world disappears, when dream disappears, when waking state disappears, and when the dreamless sleep state disappears, that one stands without a second. That we can experience. And all this other goes. We cannot have the world and the supreme consciousness called Brahman existing at the same time. It doesn't happen. So when we experience the world, we're experiencing this so-called modified entity. But how can this pure being be modified, be changed? It's a contradiction in terms. And there comes the word again. No, it only appears to be so. And the appearance goes just as the mirage goes when we come close to it. Just as the snake disappears when we see the rope. And then the ignorant people say, thank you for saving me from the snake. No, there was no snake. So under the influence of avidya or nescience, the Atman, the true self within us, the pure consciousness, appears as the individualized self we call jiva. And very often this is a question you get asked. What is the difference between Atman and jiva? Well, Atman is pure consciousness. It has no agency within it. It doesn't move. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't create. But jiva is the association with the superimposition that is put there. So, ajnana is the ignorance which makes the absolute appear as a relative, or the one appear as the many. Another way of viewing it is this: what we see as nature in the world is only fragmented God. But then if you have a keen philosophical mind, you'll ask, how can God be fragmented? No, it only appears to be like that. You have some example, yes? When we look at the ocean waves, we'll see the fragmented sun. We'll see the sparks of light on the crests of the waves in beautiful colors, all fragmented, all shimmering. But it is the one sun that is there, reflecting itself. The word prakriti, that is matter or nature, is used really to denote this Maya. It is the material out of which the whole universe has been created. But in actual practice, these distinctions are not always maintained about whether it is Maya or avidya or prakriti. These words are often interchanged. The word Maya itself is first used in the Rig Veda, and it's there to denote some kind of magical power. And even in the Atharva Shastra, where we have treatises on war, one technique of war is Maya. That is a deceit. Some example of that in Oriental warfare will be in the Second World War, where the Japanese ambassador was nicely talking to his American counterparts, and as he was talking, Pearl Harbor was under attack. The Occidental mind says, oh, this is grossly unfair. It's not the rules of warfare. The Orientalists will say, no, it's one of our rules. We're allowed to engage in deception. In the South Africa, in the Boer War, there's one episode where the expected British attack was supposed to come at one point, and the Boers, or the Dutch farmers, they built kind of walls of rocks and put sticks through, so that it looked as if there was a whole armed force was there, and they were able to deceive people in this way. It's often contended that the doctrine of Maya and the illusionists of the relative world are in conflict with the affirmative, optimistic view of life. Because if we say it is only illusion, then where's the motive to engage in it? And the Upanishads are very positive and optimistic. Maya is a later development really in the Vedantic school, and that is created by Shankara. This is what some people are asserting. But the Upanishads no doubt describe both the universe and the individual soul as manifestations of Brahman, bliss absolute, and thereby they explain the whole totality of things and the affirmative view of the universe. So this would not be a correct view. In the Upanishads, the word Maya acquires really a philosophical significance. And there's an interesting passage in the Shvetarashva. I'm tongue-tied this evening. Shvetashvatara Upanishad, denoting what is really can be described as cosmic person. So this is how we can view nature as such. Don't forget what happens in the microcosmic level, this is the axiom, will happen on the macrocosmic level. What happens in one place has to happen everywhere. If we accept that law, then we can view the whole of the cosmos as a kind of magnificent person. We have limbs, we have legs, we have arms, hands, and so on. And so, all the material of the universe, can it be like that? Even if you examine the human body very closely at the atomic level, it's mostly empty. I know you think it only applies to brains being empty, but the whole of the body is empty. It's just space, that's all. It doesn't look like that, does it? See how Maya works. Now imagine in the universe such a vastness. The density of the universe is very, very little. It's almost empty. There's not much density in it at all. In fact, if you would take the whole of matter, it would fit into a few cupfuls in terms of its density. So is this like a cosmic person? Salvanana shiro griha salva bhuta guhashaya. He who is in the faces, heads, and necks of all, who dwells in the cave of the heart of all beings, who is all-pervading, he is the Lord, and therefore the omnipresent auspicious one. Of course, the term for auspicious one is Shiva. It's the first mention we have, really, of a personalized entity. And this is, of course, in the Upanishads. So, let us have a look at this. If we can take every face, every hand, all necks, all limbs, and then we understand that inside all of this is a subtle entity, a cave of the heart. We know that in every entity there is experience that is not tangible to us. It is only subjectively true. If I say that I had a dream last night, there's no evidence of it. I'm only telling you about it. You never saw the dream. I never saw your dream. So these are things which are there internally, no doubt, much more subtle. Is there an area like that? Is there a dream area in this cosmic person? Is there an area where it is full of parallel universes? Is there an area of heavens? Is there an area of all kinds of events, so subtle? And then is there a causal place there? Now the Mandukya Upanishad will tell us of these 4 states of consciousness. The waking state is there. We deem this to be extremely real, and so it seems to be. But from Brahman's point of view, all these states of consciousness are as unreal, as impermanent as a dream. This is Maya. So can you imagine now, in the very internal essence of all these varieties, something which is also all-pervading everywhere, and that is the Lord. So that when we look into the depths of the sky, and when we look into every face, we should be able to recognize it, because the whole of nature will provide all the objects and places and people and events as signatures, signposts. Look, did you see the inner core of it? Did you see that Lord of the universe standing within? And did that lead you to a feeling of adoration? Did it evoke in you a surge? Did you feel some emotion? Did you feel love? Or did you take it on the surface? That person indeed is the great Lord, it goes on to say, the impeller of the highest being. He, the power of reaching in the purest attainment, the rule of the imperishable light. That means, instead of thinking that there is an extra cosmic creator God outside everything, with the mystery of creating ex nihilo from nothing, or even some entity that is transcendent and doesn't manifest at all. That is Gaudapada's position, or Shankaracharya's position, looking at it from the point of view of this Maya. Then we see here this idea, a cosmic person, the whole sum totality is that. So Vivekananda puts this definition. What is this Ashwara, this Lord? He says, imagine now a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is everywhere. What a beautiful description. A circle whose circumference is nowhere, infinite, but whose center is everywhere. But did we notice it? And the individual soul, a circle whose circumference is nowhere, but whose center is in one particular place. We can put appears to be in one particular place. A person of the measure of a thumb is the inner self, ever dwelling in the heart of men. For meditation purposes, we can put it. And when we look at somebody, we can evoke that as well. He is the Lord of the knowledge, framed by the heart and the mind. They who know that become immortal. There's nobody on the planet who willingly, in normal circumstances, wants to die. There are people, of course, who think that they'll do away with their life, thinking they'll also do away with their problem. But according to the Sankhya, law of causality, the problem doesn't go away. It simply repeats. So it's not a way out. What is a way out? To understand that there's an immortal path. That is the path of the Upanishads. That is the path of Vedanta. The person, Sahasra Shirsha Purushaha, the person has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes. Of course, if you want to be pedantic, you say, oh, the universe is only 1,000 of this, 1,000 of that. No, that's the expression. 1,000 means infinite, countless. A person has 1,000 heads, 1,000 eyes, 1,000 feet. He surrounds the earth on all sides and stands 10 fingers breadth beyond. 10 fingers breadth, that means endless, shoreless. Though the Supreme manifests himself in the cosmos, he also transcends it. And then it goes on to say, Purusha evadam sarvam yad bhutam yat cha bhavyam. The person is truly this whole world. Whatever has been and whatever will be. He is also the Lord of immortality and whatever grows up by food. The whole world is the whole totality. How is it that we didn't notice? Because we were looking at one section and not seeing the whole thing. Like looking at a television picture and seeing only one pixel and not seeing the entire picture. It makes sense when we see more of it. Somebody under laboring who didn't normally watch a lot of television but had to stay indoors with the COVID said, I'm watching much more television now, the whole screen. So when we look at the whole screen, the whole thing comes together. When we look at just 1 or 2 pixels, then we're in for trouble. We puzzle, scratch our head and say, we don't understand. What is this? You put a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle together and the one piece looks like the blueness of the sky and one is the blueness, but it's a different kind of blue. It may be the ocean. And then how to put these compatibly together, because every piece has its own individual fitting. When we look at the sum totality, we have the answer. My example is always like this, and I always try to make it a little humorous. So imagine now some frogs in water, and the only thing is they're dimensionally deficient. We also are dimensionally deficient. We cannot see the totality. I make fun with some people. I don't believe in evolution, I say, because I believe in the totality. If you have the totality, then nothing's changing. So the frog scientists, don't ask how frogs can be scientists. They got together, they wanted to investigate what is this phenomenon called a cone. And so they got a professor to introduce a cone into the water. The frog's dimensional deficiency was they had no vertical sight. They couldn't look up, they couldn't look down. They only had a horizontal view. From their point of view, Mr. Cone is born. It's a point. They faithfully record it and discuss the origin, the birth, the creation. And there it is. Birth must be there. Life must be there. Death must be there. Maybe even reincarnation must be there. Let us see how this evolves over time. And as the professor lowers the cone into the water, that point evolves into a circle and continues. And they continue their measurements, measuring the circumference, taking careful notes, doing what scientists do best, gathering the observational evidence and put it into a database, big computer. And as the cone progresses more and more, it evolves, becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, like a pot-bellied person. And finally, the whole thing disappears. We regret to announce our experiment was fine so far, but unfortunately, poor Mr. Cone died. Now let's go back to our laboratory. Let us discuss our measurements. Let us see how quickly this evolved, when it was born, when it died, and where it's going to reincarnate. But none of these things are true. It was only our view of things, because we were unable to see the sum totality of everything. Here is a presentation of that totality. Another example, favorite example, would be blind men investigating the elephant. One never knows whether it's from Buddhism or Hinduism or what have you. Each one claims it. But it's a well-known example. Blind men come to investigate the elephant. Naturally, they'll interpret it in their own way according to how they feel something in the boundaries of space and time. So one will feel the elephant's trunk. We're talking of a very patient elephant here. And the elephant, so like a hose. That's his interpretation. Another one catches the tail, it's a rope. Another one catches the leg, it's a pillar. Another one catches the ear. It's like a big plantain leaf. Of course, none of these are correct, but they all have the problem of ajnana. They have ignorance, they don't have the full sight. They don't have access to the totality of knowledge. Now you can push the example a little bit further. Supposing they were all sighted and they see the totality of the elephant, something is still missing. There's always a beyond, because the elephant is in a space. And beyond the elephant is a space. And beyond that is a space. And so it goes on. You put a small dot on a blackboard or a whiteboard, and what do you see? The correct answer is, I see a dot and the board beyond it. And I see the board, when I see it, I see the room beyond it. You can go on ad infinitum. So there is a transcendent aspect to this, beyond this totality. And when we sit there in the absolute totality of things, totality really is a totality of parts. So in a sense, we cannot say totality in the absolute sense. We can only say the absolute. And when the absolute is there with nothing else, a non-dualistic position, not a monistic position. Non-dualistic, there are no two. Monistic suggestion, there may be another. So in a non-dualistic position, a Advaita position, all the data, all the dualism, all the fragmentation has gone. For that reason, we know that there's pure being, without explaining how does being enter into becoming. And we don't have any explanation about that. We put it in an agnostic area and say, we don't know. We don't know, but we don't know why it's there, but we know how it's there. It's there through apparitional causation. And that every projection of it that we see in the universe, every part of the illusion, every part of our own reality that we call the universe is a signpost, is an indication, is a strong, strong indicator of something beneath it, some substratum. This is why we have electrical energy flying off. This is why we have gravity. Gravity wants to bring everything together and unite everything. Electrical energy wants everything to fly off. And inertia wants things to stay the same. You can try it in a car. You can sit in a car. Don't expect it will move. You have to do something. And then don't expect it to want to stop. You have to do something else, apply brakes. So this is the world in which we live, and it's designed for your revelation, because the revealing aspect of this Maya is also there. We always have to bear in mind these three entities, the sattva, this rajas, and this tamas. And with the characteristic that rajas and tamas will obscure the reality. The projection and the hiding will obscure the reality. We have to use another thing, and that is the sattva. What are the characteristics of sattva or illumination? It is to engage all the noble qualities. The Vedic prayers, may noble thoughts come to us from all sides. So we have to be prepared for that, and we have to be alert. We have to watch out for the condition of the mind at any point in time. Understanding that the whole of this nature has these three component parts. We have to see that mind as part of nature, as a kind of stage for a drama of events that we call thoughts or feelings, and we have to assess it. Which actor is playing on board at this point? And what part is it playing? Is it playing an angry part? Is it playing a jealous part, a possessive part, or a part of generosity? Which one? And whichever it is, we promote the generosity one. So this wonderful idea of the totality of things is truly what nature is. The person, this Shvetashvatara Upanishad continues, is truly this whole world. Whatever has been and whatever will be, he is also the Lord of immortality. Whatever grows up by food, on every side it has a hand and a foot. On every side an eye, a head and a face. It has an ear everywhere. It stands encompassing all the world, so that when we look down into the sky, when we look at the blackness, when we look at the sparkling stars, we have to understand with a certain sense of poetic imagination, Lord, you are twinkling with your 1,000 eyes, you are winking at me. You are blinking with your 1,000 eyes. You are moving the arms of your galaxies. All galaxies are thine. And what a beautiful picture of this is portrayed for us in the 11th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where the cosmic vision is given to us. And there, all events are there. In God's area, there's no time. There's no past, present, or future. It's all happening now. So Arjun, in his cosmic vision, sees all the events about to happen, and he sees them happening and that they have happened already. Reflecting the qualities of all the senses, Salvendriya Gunabhasam, and yet devoid of all the senses, it is the Lord and ruler, it is the great refuge of all. Navadhare pure dihi hamso lilayate bahya. The embodied soul in the city of 9 gates sports, moving to and fro in the outside world, the control of the whole world, of the stationary and the moving. We find reference to this in the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 13th stanza, of a 9-gated city. We also see that in the Katha Upanishad, the fifth section, first stanza. Again, the 11-gated city. 11-gated city, 7 in the head. Then there's the navel. There's the organ of procreation, evacuation. So in total 11, the Brahmarandra, the royal entrance at the top of the head. What a beautiful idea that there's an entity, a ruler, sitting within the city of 11 gates or 9 gates. Because of its presence, everything moves. We shouldn't take it for granted. Don't take ownership for yourself. It is because of that divine presence that food gets digested, that all the traffic moves around the body. And the body is a city with its own pneumatic system, its own motorways, its own road repairs, not just at the end of the year budget time, but always constantly doing it. Giving you a flow of energy all the time, having waste disposal systems, having train loads of goods being delivered to every cell of the body and taking away the waste products and putting it in the lymphatic system and throwing off waste products as carbon dioxide through the lungs. All of this because of the ruler of the city. A little thanks is probably due, but we take it for granted. So, as I say, everything is an indication of this. Without foot or hand, yet swift and grasping, he sees without the eye, he hears without the ear, he knows whatever is to be known. Of him there is none who knows. They call him the primeval, that is the Supreme Person. Supreme Person, this Purusham Mahantam, Supreme Person. Subtler than the subtler, greater than the great, is that self which is set in the cave of the heart of the creature. One beholds him as being actionless and becomes freed from sorrow. When through the grace of the Creator, he sees the Lord and his majesty. That is through the clarity born of sense control that you'll see that. Then this beautiful statement, Vedaham etam ajram puranam. I know this undecaying, ancient, primeval self of all, present in everything on account of infinity, not just speculation, not sweet talk, a declaration. I know this undecaying, I have seen this undecaying, this ancient, this primeval self of all, present in everything on account of infinity, of whom they declare there is stoppage of birth. The expounders of Brahman proclaim him to be eternal. One text called the Narayana Dipika suggests a reading that says, for whom birth and death are not spoken of. So this chapter makes out that the impersonal and the personal, Brahman and Ishvara, are not two different entities, but the same in two aspects. The creator and the transcendent, same entity. The whole universe, the same entity. The manifested Brahman, the same entity. The transcendent absolute, the same entity. Two dimensions of the same thing. So that when we now look out at the universe, when we assess what is nature as a totality, we now have to see if we can cultivate on the basis of this a different outlook, a different interpretation of nature. And what will be the result of that? It'll have a transforming influence on us. Philosophy has no value if it is not practical. Here the practicality is there. Sorrow departs. Immortality is gained. And the sweetness of seeing the nature as it is, the sweetness of sattva, as opposed to the antagonistic, struggling aspects of these other two dimensions of Maya, Rajas and Tamas. Whenever you have a free moment. All your moments are free, of course, unless you put something in. But whenever the mind is not steered in any particular direction, you should stand back. What train is arriving in my mental train station? And is it of the characteristic of sattva or rajas or tamas? And whatever it is, you put the sattva in. It's not that you use this whenever there's a problem and difficulty. You use this in order to reform your habit level, and that buffers any difficulty that is to come. So that the condition of the unconscious mind is automatically reacting in an enlightened way, in a knowledgeable way, a way which is sattvic. This is the game of life that we play with the playground that we call nature. It's very useful to think of this nature as a playground where we play out our drama. What is the nature of the game? The nature of the game is steering the mind, steering the gear stick of attention up towards sattva. Just like we do in a manual geared car. What is the lowest gear? Tamas. Bring it up to rajas. From rajas, bring it to sattva. Do that all the time. Tamas, rajas, sattva. Tamas, rajas, sattva. All the time you do it. If necessary, you bring it down. But always make sure that the end result is upward, upward. Given an upward trend to the mind is called the game of life. We should play it well. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.